Before we start, quick shout out to our friends at insights.gg. They have a platform that helps players improve their performance with VOD reviews and AI stats. If you're serious about getting better, create a free account today. Over the past weeks of Overwatch League competition, we've seen teams adapt and improve as they look for every possible advantage they can get, no matter how small. We'll be highlighting a couple of these micro plays every now and then, which might be too small to merit a full-length analysis video but are no less interesting or important. Let's take a look at the first fight between the Dragons and the Spark for point C of Dorado. Lip gets his EMP earlier than Bazzi, but doesn't use it when he sees that the Spark are grouped up on the high ground. This is because even if he hits all 6, there is no way for his team, especially his tanks, to follow up. Instead, he waits for the Spark to drop down. Then EMP and combos withstand one's shatter. Even though it only hits Gushue and Void takes down Adora, the rest of the Spark are able to escape back to the spawn. But this is actually all according to the Dragon's plan. The Spark now have their EMP Death Blossom combo and are coming up on 5 ults, an advantage which could easily swing the fight. Presumably, they already know IDK does not have Sound Barrier, having used it earlier, so they grab and Spark spawn, taking down 3 members. Even though Bazzi and Adora managed to get their EMP Death Blossom off, there is no one to capitalize on the EMP, and the damage is totally negated by Li Zhegong's Sound Barrier. This point capture was thanks to some good ult tracking and situational awareness from the Dragons, so credit to them. Next, let's take a look at this pretty cool use of Mei wall tech, no pun intended, by Seo Min-soo. During Vancouver's attack round on Eichenwald against the charge, Seo Min-soo is freezing Shu, which causes him to drop his immortality field to survive the follow-up headshot. Instead, once Seo Min-soo gets the freeze off, he immediately uses his ice wall to lift Shu up, which also happens to block the line of sight of the immortality field as it gets stuck inside the wall. This allows him to easily get the final blow with the headshot. While it's well known that you can use a wall to block the line of sight of immortality, it's pretty rare to see a wall used this way. Another interesting play during the Vancouver Titans game comes during the Titans attack on Volskaya. Seo Min-soo gives Stitch a teleporter to the high ground, which he takes as Tracer and then blinks through the top right window to scout out the charge's composition, allowing Vancouver to make the appropriate swaps to the composition that they want. Unfortunately, despite how pretty this play looks, the Titans still end up getting steamrolled by the charge, and end the series in the most embarrassing way possible, getting full held after C9ing in the final fight. Something interesting we noticed while making our behind the action on the Hunter's Dragon match from week 8 is that Ameng's rollout doesn't actually get the mileage that he wanted, as he appears to start his grappling hook too early and gets stuck on the wall. But what he is actually doing here is using the short grapple to get high enough so that in third-person view he can peek over the top of the wall to see the Dragon's positioning and team composition early. If you're a ball player, you could consider doing this at the start of rounds for scouting. Here are some statistics from the most recent GravBag article by Overwatch League writer Emerald Gao. We can see that despite both players being on Moira for the entire match, Violet was far outpacing Crimzo, with almost 50 more eliminations and about 25,000 more healing across the 5 maps played, for an average of 5,000 more healing per match. During the match itself, we also noticed that Violet was consistently able to get his ult much faster than Crimzo. Let's take a look at Busan from the Fuel Shock match to find out what's going on. Violet is up to 80% on his ult by the time the Shock get the first point capture, and first uses his ult 45 seconds into the round. In comparison, Crimzo has not even hit 60% on his Coalescence. This Moira ult will prove decisive, as Violet takes down closer and keeps his tanks alive to secure the first fight for San Francisco. So we've already seen Violet outpace the opposing Moira and win the fight off it, showing the importance of charging your ult fast. But how does he do it? First, the Shock appear to be taking more poke damage on their way in. This is because Shock are looking to be the aggressors, and thus they need to save their resources like shields, Sigma's Kinetic Grasp, Reaper's Wraith Form, and Mei's Ice Wall, in order to be able to rush down the fuel. In comparison, the fuel appear to be just waiting for the Shock to come to them. This means that Violet is constantly healing his teammates, and he is about 15% ahead of Crimzo by the time the engage starts, mostly thanks to healing Rascal up from critical health and damaging Doha. By comparison, the only thing that Crimzo can do is hit Smurf's shield. The other thing is this Great Wall by Rascal. It doesn't quite accomplish its objective of trapping the fuel, but it still separates Crimzo from his front line to some extent. What this means is that after pumping heals into his tanks for a second or two, Violet can still leave the passive healing to tick up and still do damage to the fuel player struggling to get behind the wall. After the fight, he then uses a healing orb to heal up the remaining damage. The only thing Crimzo can do this entire fight is heal his teammates, and he ends up doing very little damage in the fight. Dealing damage as Moira is, contrary to popular belief, also very important. Firstly, because you can charge your ult through it, and secondly, because it helps you recharge your healing meter, or juice as it is commonly known. What Violet is very good at doing is switching rapidly between damage and healing in a fight to get maximum value out of his time, and his team sets him up very well for it. We'll explain this a little more later on. There are 3 things to take note in the next fight. First is the lack of value Crimzo gets from this particular healing orb. using it even though his entire team is near full health. This not only means that he gets next to no ult charge, but also means that he misses out on the 300 healing it provides until later on in the fight. The second thing is the pressure that Shock put on the fuel supports. First we see the halt from Smurf forcing Crimzo to fade away. This also means that he can't heal Closer, who goes down to Violet. Then as he tries to heal up Gamsu, Rascal suddenly appears on the flank, and he is forced to fade again to avoid the freeze, ending up outside of the fight. The third thing is this strange decision by Note to separate himself from his team. Even after doing that, he also doesn't position his shield up to help Gamsu, and ends up just putting irrelevant damage into the back of the Shock. This also means that Crimzo gets 0 healing onto him, and hence 0 ult charge, which might have otherwise allowed him to build his coalescence fast enough to turn the fight. Let's take a look at another first fight, this time on Mecha Base. Crimzo keeps his pace better this time, but still ends up only at 80% to ult when Violet gets his. This time the charge rate is even faster, at just 34 seconds. The discrepancy starts from the first orb again, as Violet throws his downward while Crimzo throws his to the side at Note a little later. Violet is able to get the ult charge from the orb bouncing off the ceiling back to his team, while Crimzo's goes flying off into the Shock's territory and is barely even used. As this fight goes on, it feels like Violet is not healing his team to full on purpose, and that totally makes sense. Think about it this way, Moira's left click provides 65 healing per second per target hit while it is held down, but it also provides 65 healing over 4 seconds after you stop left clicking on the target. Her right click does 50 damage per second. So if Violet heals for 1 second and then damages for another second, he gives a total of slightly over 81 healing while also dealing 50 damage. The ult charge rates may not be the same, but having his teammates' health bars not topped off to full means he can get full value out of the passive healing while using less juice. This can be taken one step further with the healing orb, where you can throw the orb and then focus on damaging since the orb will heal faster than your regular left click until it runs out. Violet makes these switches very fast, while Crimzo doesn't appear to be taking full advantage. Here he spends a prolonged period of time on heal, even though his tanks are at full health, and then throws his orb even though their health is still quite high. This means he doesn't have it later when both Gamsu and Doha go down to critical. Then again he throws a healing orb at Note even though the Sigma is at full health. This is not to say that Crimzo is a terrible Moira. This fight in particular could have been a result of a moment of panic or just being unlucky. But across the series and the various fights, we can see how Shock's compositions, their playstyle and positioning, as well as Violet's own mastery of the hero made the difference in winning opening fights off of a good coalescence. And that's all for this episode of Microplays. Let us know if you would like to see more short form analysis like this in the future, and let us know your favorite plays in the comments below.